Dorothy Guining with Scrapbooking Quebec. Today I'm here for the Scrapbook Nerd online shop, and I'll be creating a 12 by 12 layout featuring a Vicki Boutin Fernwood Collection. For this one, I decided to shake things up a bit and step outside my comfort zone. I end up using a wild print as a background paper and really small photos, and those are two things I rarely do. I ended up with a page that is very different for me, but I ended up finding a design that worked well for my less than perfect photos. These are photos of day one of my husband's hot pepper garden for 2022. And I ended up finding a design that I think would work really well for anything learning related or school related. And I'll explain that a bit later on as well. So here is what I'm going to be using. It's all from the Fernwood collection, except for that wood grain paper from Simple Stories, which happens to be a staple in my scrap room. It's almost like white cardstock to me. And I got all of these products at the Scrapbook Nerd online shop. So I will link up the shop as well as everything I use in the description box below. So here's what's on my desk. That's the wild print that I'm going to be using as my background paper. So I'm showing you I have 3 wallet-sized photos. I end up trimming those up a little bit later on. Here are the other papers I've selected, including that wood grain from Simple Stories. And in this tray, I have a bunch of picked over embellishments from the Fernwood collection. I've been using this collection for a few months. I absolutely love it. So the first thing I'm going to do is trim down some photos. So I am going to be using a square die here, and I will put measurements on the screen. Obviously, you don't need square dies to cut photos in squares, but if you have them, this is a great time to pull them out because I'm going to be making a strip of photos. And by using square dies, they are all 100% identical in size. They're also great if you are creating grids, stuff like that. Now off camera, I used my dies as well to cut out 3 mats in white cardstock, and each one of those is backed with foam adhesive. So what I'm going to do right now is just adhere my photos on top of these mats, and it's really important to me that these photos are popped up and do have white mats because that background is really busy. My photos are really small, so I want my photos to stand out. I don't want them to be lost in my background paper. And this is another fun thing to mention. I'm working backwards today. Normally I start with my foundation page and kind of work my way up towards my photos. I'm doing it the opposite today. I'm starting with my photos and working backwards towards my foundation page. Maybe it's because my background paper is so wild. Anyway, you can see I'm cutting up a bunch of paper here. I cut up that green paper, which is going to house my photos. I cut the wood grain paper, and the flip side of it is the graph paper. So really what was intentional here was that green paper, I wanted to house that strip of photos, but the other 2, I just wanted them to be bigger than that green paper. So I wanted that wood grain to be about 1 inch longer than the green paper, and the graph paper, which is the flip side of that wood grain, I wanted it to be 1 inch longer than the wood grain paper. And each one of those larger blocks is 5 inches wide, but that is basically random. It was just a size I pulled out of my head. Anyway, all measurements are on the screen. So you can see I adhered my photos with the foam adhesive on that green mat. And now what I'm going to do is just play around with the background paper. I'm going to want to add more layers here. So I'm going to addition different pattern papers, the ones that I kind of pre-selected for this project. And so I end up going with that teal, that pale green ledger. I do use this green and teal colored striped, or whatever you want to call it, chevron paper. I had another one there. I just cast it to the side. I was happy with what I had going on here at this point. And I'm showing you a die. This is from Elizabeth Craft Designs. It's one of her Planners Essentials series dies. I have a bunch of them, and basically each one of these dies comes with a planner page and some accessories, and the accessories are always different, and the planner pages are always similar except for the placement of the tab. And what I was looking for this project was a page with the tab on the side and not on the top. And you'll see why in a minute when I place all of this to the page. And I do want to point out that there are a few of these dies in the shop with the tab on the side. This one here, I don't think it's available right now. It's in the shop, but it's not orderable at this point. But there are two others in the shop with the tab on the side like this one. So now what you're going to see me do is just play around with my layers here. And it's almost going to look like a filing cabinet. Basically, what I'm trying to do here is place these planner pages to create layers, and I'm staggering them just so that I could see all of the different tabs. And I want to see the different papers underneath that photo cluster there. I did snap a little photo because I do want to add ink to each one of these papers, and I like the way this looks right now. So I knew I would have to kind of take everything apart to add the ink. That's why I snapped a photo. So the ink I'm using is Morning Mist by VersaFine Claire, and I'm adding ink to all of the planner pages and the wood grain. I don't end up adding ink to the graph paper or to the green paper. So at this point, I'm just adhering all of these planner pages to the wood grain paper, and then what you'll see me do is adhere that strip of photos on top of it. I will keep the graph paper separate for the time being. I'm going to want to play around with placement of the title, and at this point I'm not quite sure how much journaling I'm going to need, because that graph paper is going to be where I put my journaling a bit later on as well. So at this point, I decide to get out the green paper, and I'm thinking of maybe putting a border over there on the left. I end up cutting it at 1.5 inches wide, and then you're going to see me get out a scoring board. I place it there, and when I placed it there, it made me think of a notebook. So I get out a scoring board, and I'm just scoring at 3/8 of an inch. So it's not in the middle, it's more towards the left. And I'm just making a folded line there to make it look like a book binding. And I'm really happy with that. And this was simply an idea that came to me because I was playing with product. And the reason why I was playing more than usual is because I was working outside my comfort zone. So sometimes it's a good idea to play outside of your comfort zone. Anyway, you can see I added some ink, the very same ink, Morning Mist by VersaFine Claire, around my book binding, and now I'm adhering it to the page. At this point, actually what you see me doing right there is once again scoring. I felt it wasn't as obvious as I would like it. When I saw the book binding there, it made me think more of a notebook. So I got out my corner rounder from Creative Memories, and I rounded the corners on the right-hand side. And then I ended up rounding one of the corners on that graph paper. So I'm really happy with this. This is really fun. And you can see why this page design would be great for anything learning or school related, because it does kind of look like a book. You can see I've got all of my embellishing around me here at this point, and I'm showing you some leaf die cuts that I did off screen. So I used a die from Cartabella. It's an older one from one of their collections, Welcome Autumn. Basically, I was looking for something that I could use as a base layer in each one of the embellishment clusters. So I cut out a bunch of leaves. That's perfect for that. And I showed you I have ephemera, I have stickers, chipboard, alphas, and cut aparts, all from the Fernwood collection. Now the first thing I'm going to dig into are the alphas, because all the important parts of my page are there except for the title. So I know where my journaling is going to go, but I do need a title. So I'm using these alphas from the Fernwood collection, and it's going to be The Garden, as simple as that. So I'm putting it on wax paper. Now in the past I have colored in these alphas before, and they are really, really fun. I've used them with alcohol markers, and it takes the color really, really well. But these ones I'm just going to leave in their natural state. So it's on wax paper right now, and now I'm playing around with embellishment clusters. So I want one in the bottom right, and you can see me playing around with chipboard right now. I've got 3 houses and 3 garden gnomes, and I find those pieces adorable, and I never thought I'd be able to use them, but I'm really happy to be using them right now. And then I tucked in a few leaves in and around there. So now I'm working in the opposite corner. I put a few leaves there. I have a little tab that says love this. I'm looking for something red to repeat the hats in the gnome, repeat the red that's in the hats of the gnomes. I couldn't find anything at this point. I've got a lot of loose pieces, so I decided to just go forth and start adhering, and then I would worry about adding some red in the top left a little bit later on. So you can see I adhered my graph paper, I adhered my photo cluster. I'm starting with the title. I stopped the film, I continued adhering the title, and now I'm adhering the pieces in the bottom right. So you can see I've got those two houses flat to the page. I'm adhering a few of the leaves in and around that area. I end up putting the gnome, one gnome in between the two houses. And then that other house, the beige house, I end up putting that kind of in front. It overlaps another piece of chipboard. So I'm adding a bit of foam adhesive so that it's nice and flush. And then I will add a few more leaves and two more of those gnomes there. So I'm really quite happy with that cluster. I'm really thrilled to be using up these pieces that I found so cute and was never able to use before. Now I'm working in the top left there. So I am looking for something red. I tuck in that little red label from the ephemera pack, and then I'm going to add a few leaves and that tab. That label, that red label, stays there for a little bit, but I end up removing it. And in a moment, you're going to see I go into the sticker sheet. I'm probably jumping ahead of myself right now, but I end up going into the little sticker book from this collection, and I find these little mushrooms with the red tops, and they're so, so cute. So I end up tucking a few of those in and around each one of the clusters. I actually replace that label that's in the top left cluster with mushrooms, but you're going to see in the very end, in the still shots, I end up removing all of that. So this is just me trying to add a few finishing touches. At one point, you saw me bring out a page protector. I was thinking of adding holes over there in that border on the far left, and I ended up doing it off camera. I showed you that, but I ended up replacing it. It was just way too much. Anyway, now what you see me doing is getting out a stamp set that I often use. It's by Elizabeth Craft Designs. It's called Vacay Phrases, and the two ones I'm using is Happy Place and this here, something like that. Anyway, this stamp set I use all the time. It's on my desk all the time, and it fits perfectly in these planner pages. So I stamp in two of the tabs, two of the lighter planner pages, and I'm happy with that. And that is basically it. All I ended up doing off camera was my journaling, of course, and you can see that those mushroom stickers that I put in both of those clusters, I ended up removing them, mostly because there is so much going on this page. I just felt I had too much going on, so I removed it, and I'm happier with that. So I just had to let go of the idea of having red in both of the clusters, and I'm good with that. So that is basically it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I'd greatly appreciate a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the Scrapbook Nerd YouTube channel, we would be absolutely thrilled if you did. And the same thing for my channel, Scrapbooking Quebec. Make sure to head on over to the Scrapbook Nerd shop to check out for these supplies and more. All the links are listed below. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon on YouTube. Bye-bye.